Hi. Hi. Welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Boa tarde. My name is Cynthia Zurita, and I have the honor to welcome you to our kickoff event of the Urban Future Global Conference meeting, which is going to be held next year here in this beautiful city, which I am also honored to live in. And well, today starts officially the countdown to our very expected event to next year. I had the luck to be in the event of this year in Norway, in Oslo. And well, when it's time to talk about this conference, I have two ideas that come to my mind that I would like to share with you. One is getting involved, and the second one is context. Because lately, talking about sustainability, about sustainable cities has become very trendy. But I think one of the special things of this conference is that it brings you context. For example, I am Ecuadorian. I live in Portugal, but I am Ecuadorian. I am an economist, an environmental economist, and I am very, of course, into city change. So for me, the perspective that I have, and I am learning here, it's very interesting, and it gets very enriched with yours. So the context that this conference gives is amazing. And the second one, it's also getting involved. Like, this is a space where public leaders, private leaders, politicians, and young professionals get together, sit in a round table, share experiences in a very honest way. I was part of that. I joined this conference as part of the Young Leaders program, and I had the amazing opportunity of, I don't know, taking a coffee with a former vice mayor of Santiago de Chile. That kind of opportunities actually gives some different approach to the fact of handling the issues of sustainable cities. So for me, it's an amazing experience. I am truly enthusiastic to be able to present this to you, and I hope you enjoy this. The plan for today, I'm going to give time to Mr. Gerald Bebelsutter, the CEO of Urban Future Global Conference. He's going to talk us a little bit about the heart of the conference, the topics that are going to be covered. And then, well, we're going to have some speakers as Clara Musio, Helen Devivo, Maria Vasilich, and of course our mayor, Mr. Fernando Medina. So I hope you enjoy it. Please take the opportunity, take the chance to make as many questions as you want. I would like to do the same, so yeah, let's enjoy it. Thank you for coming.
Have you ever started something with a very clear goal where you want to go, with a vision, and then you started, and in the end it went a completely different direction as you initially planned? Well, this is how the Urban Future got started, because when it got started, it was not even supposed to be a conference in the first place. We worked for the city that we live in, for the city of Graz, as consultants in the project on sustainable mobility. And basically over a beer at night with the project team from the city, they started to talk, and they said, well, Gerald, you know what? We really, really cannot stand this terminology, smart city, anymore. Or smart citizen, or smart mobility, or whatever smart. And I had to smile a bit, and I let them talk, and they said, well, this is all about selling stuff to cities. It's not really the challenge that we have. So I asked them, well, what is the challenge then? They said, it's not the selection of a certain technology that's really a problem. The question is, once we make a decision to do something, how on earth do we get it done and implement it and make sure that people are on board and all the stakeholders are on board? So when we went back to our office, we kept thinking, and we thought, wouldn't it be pretty cool for them as city to invite like 10 projects from around Europe who do sustainable mobility, and invite the project leaders and let them talk about their experiences in exactly how they made it happen, how they made the project implemented. And in particular, talk about the things that you usually don't read about, like all the things that went wrong, that didn't turn out the way that they should have, and so on. So we pitched this idea to them, and they said, yeah, that would be really cool. And we started to work, and obviously, the city liked it, because we keep getting calls from other cities in Austria, where people said, oh, we heard you're having this workshop, could we also come? And at one point, we got a bit annoyed about all the calls, and we said, let's just make it a public event. And that was the moment when we thought, well, maybe we are on something. And we were dreaming of maybe getting together like 200 people to talk about how to drive change in cities. To keep a long story short, we did hit a nerve, because when the first conference took place, it was more than 1,000 people from 32 countries getting together. And we really didn't do anything. It just snowballed out. And today, the Urban Future is Europe's largest event on making sustainable cities. And it's certainly one of the very few places that focuses on the people driving that change in cities around the world. Just a few months ago, this May, we had the latest edition of the conference in Oslo, Norway, with about 2,600 people from 58 countries. So the really nice part about my job and the job of my team is that every single day we get in touch with so many inspiring people, because we're looking these change makers, and we find them everywhere. And it is, if there's one thing that we learned out of this work, is that very often to really make a change and to get something started and make a difference, all it needs is one person who just does it, who just gets going, taking the first step. And the Urban Future is exactly the place where thousands of these people are getting together to share their experiences and just how they did it. Today, we start the countdown for the Urban Future 2020, which will take place next year, here in Lisbon. The fact that you all are here today tells me two things. Either you already are a change maker in your city and your community, or you will be soon. In any case, welcome to the Urban Future family, and let's hear what the city changers that we invited today from other places of the world will share with us. Thank you, and enjoy the evening.
Well, always hearing Gerald talk is very inspiring. I don't know if it happens to you, but if not, it will. Believe me. So our first speaker is Clara Musio. She is the Undersecretary of Pedestrian Ways of the city of Buenos Aires, Argentina, closer to my home. Clara has more than 10 years of experience in the public sector of managing public spaces, and now she's into the pedestrian ways issue. So please welcome Clara and hear what she has to say.
Okay. First, I'm going to drink some water to calm my nerves. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to be here, so I want to thank Gerald, all the team of Urban Future, and also Mayor Medina and all his team. I'm so happy to be here. I come far away from here, from Argentina, to share with you our experience in the city of Buenos Aires. I don't know if you all know where Buenos Aires is. We are in the south of American continent, and Buenos Aires is located in the center of the country. There are 3 million inhabitants in the city, and another 3 million enter to the city every day to work, to study, or just browse. And half of them enter by car. So the former and the present administration have followed a relevant policy, which is to make our city more sustainable, more safe, green, livable, walkable city, and a smart city. And when I think in a smart city, when I was a kid, when I saw Supersónicos, I don't know if here do you have that kind of TV show, I imagine the city of the future with flying cars, with you touch the windows and everything appears. When now I think in the in the future of the cities, I think in people. In my children, I have 2 children, in my children and where they use the space in the city of Buenos Aires. So I come here to talk about one of the most important projects for me in the city, that is Plan Microcentro. We transform the way that the people move in the center of the city in a couple of years. This is the Microcentro, is our central area in Buenos Aires. It's like 92 full blocks, it's 1.4 square kilometers, and every day more than 1 million people walk around this area. And more than 150,000 cars entered to this area a few years ago. So we decided to transform the city in a walkable spot in the city. It's a very well-connected area. We have a good public transport, subways, 44 buses lanes. It used to have part in this area. And, of course, it's an important spot. It's the most important spot in the city. But, well, you are thinking, what was wrong with this area and what she is talking about this? Well, I want to show you some picture of this area in 2012. As you can see, it's a full car-oriented area. A lot of vehicles, like buses, taxis, cars, motorbikes, everywhere. And the sidewalks were too narrow to move around. It's so unsafe. We had a lot of accidents. And the relation between the sidewalks and the cars, it's like this, 1:4. We have most of the area for cars, and we have only 2 streets pedestrians, full pedestrians. The sidewalk conditions were deficient also because of the works of the public services, but not only the cars were the problem. I don't know if you have this, because in Europe, in some countries, we have illegal vendors, but in Buenos Aires, in Argentina, this is really common. And illegal vendors is not only a problem for pedestrians, but for shop owners too. And this is our Florida street, the same as this one, packed with signs. You couldn't see the sky. All of Heritage Building was packed with this advertising and unuseful old furniture. So it was really, really a mess. It's an ugly spot to visit. We have in this area more than 100 heritage buildings, and they were all dilapidated. And trash everywhere. There are a lot of offices in the area, and well, we have a big problem with trash piled up in every corner. And fortunately, most of the trash is recyclable, so we have a goal there. Well, I'm going to tell you how we solve, how we transform the area, but I want to share with you this framework that we apply to this zone, and after that we apply to every intervention in public space. I love, of course, Yangel. I don't know if you already know, and if you don't know, please read Cities for People, Ciudades para la Gente, and The Life Between Buildings are my favorite books. I have the opportunity to meet Ian twice, one in Buenos Aires. Well, our frameworks, in a normal intersection, we have different things. First of all, we have to have streets and sidewalks in a really good condition. It's like the basis, you know? In orange, we mark this infrastructure. Then the mobility things, the biking spots, the sidewalks, the buses stops. Then all the urban furniture at the eye level, the signs information, the facades, lampposts. Then green. it's really difficult for our city to create new green spaces. It's difficult to close a street or to close a block and to create parks. But I think that we have to create more space, more green space, just plant trees, green facades, wooden benches, a lot of things we can do to greener our public space. And then after all of that are in good conditions, we can think in promote events in public space. Work with the private sector in order to, I don't know, they do events in public space and arts, and to put tables and chairs in the sidewalks, and work together. So when you finally work these elements together, city life arises. And I believe that depending on the quality of the design of the public space, people will choose to stay there or to flee from it. And we really want to people stay in public space. Oh, no. So we implemented this kind of framework in every single project that we design or redesign in the public space. And in Microcentro particularly, I don't know, at the time it's okay? Okay, perfect. We start with different categories to solve all the problems that we saw on the pictures. First of all, of course, the transit and the transport management, then the public space management, the increasing of the pedestrian areas, also the treatment of the waste, and then the security is not here, but it's an important part of the plan, the restoration of heritage buildings, and then the entertainment and economic boost. And all of these categories that I have to deal with all the egos of the men's and women's in these different areas in the city of Buenos Aires, we work with different stakeholders in the different categories. For us, it was necessary to involve all of them through the participatory processes, the co-creation. So we started to work with the citizens, not only the inhabitants, not only the residents there, the shop owners, but unions, taxi drivers, I don't know, a lot of persons that wanted to be part to this project, because if not, it was very difficult to advance. So this is one of the most important things that I learned during this process. And then we, of course, applies to different projects around the city. But well, do you remember the picture of the streets in Microcentro? So we wanted this space we wanted to transform into a huge walkable space, but we had a lot of cars in there and a lot of buses in there. And in this way, we have our most important avenue in Argentina. It's the widest avenue, I think it's South America, I don't know, it's 9 de Julio Avenue. It used to have 20 car lanes. Yes, a lot. And someone, I don't have that amazing idea, someone one day said, why if we move all the buses inside the area to 9 de Julio Avenue? Well, the mayor at that time looked and you are fired, you are not, you don't know what you are saying. Well, we decided to transform the 9 de Julio Avenue in a new avenue for BRT to move most of the buses in the area, so we can start we can start to do the public works in the area. I think that in that moment we are all crazy. Strong opposition appears, of course, conservationists, because we need to change this into this. Now I don't see the difference, but at that moment it's really hard to explain. We have only had one BRT, but a small BRT in Buenos Aires. So it was a difficult thing to explain. And our mayor said, okay, do it, but do it fast. So we spent only 10 months to create these special lanes for buses. And I am smiling because I remember all the meetings that we have to do with the taxis, with, I don't know, the buses companies, the unions, conservationists, because we need to move some trees, some historical trees, and we wanted to change the face of the avenue. So we had a hard work to do. Well, after we moved some of the buses, most of the buses, 36 lines, we started to do this kind of works. Our idea was to transform all the streets into a shared streets, not only for pedestrians, but shared streets for cars, bikes, and motorbikes, and taxis. And we leveled the sidewalk with the streets, and we added elements, new furniture, lamps, 100% of LED lights in the city, and we transform all these streets into the area. 70% of the streets were transformed, and there were a big problem also that we decided to start different points at the same time. I think it was really a mess. Everyone complained. Everyone, yes, they remember my mother. This was a picture of one of the streets before the intervention, and I took this picture 3 or 4 weeks ago. We planted a lot of trees. We didn't have enough green in this zone. We have only 2 parks near the Microcentro area, and we planted more than 1,000 trees, and now, well, they are growing up. I think that you can see the difference. And my English is not so good, so I'm going to see you some more pictures. This is another thing that we done in the pedestrian street. We changed all the urban furniture to a new one. We, of course, plant trees in Florida Street, is one of our pedestrian streets. And then we implemented a huge plan to manage the trash. First of all, changed the way that the offices manage the trash, and then we implemented underground bins whenever we can, and it's really changed the way that the Microcentro looks now. And we also work with the private sector to restore heritage building. And now, for example, in those domes, there are a nice bar, so it's really nice. I have to finish. Well, now it's really a place to meet, where people can talk, where people can laugh, can study. When I think in Microcentro 15 years ago, it was full of cars. Now it's full of people, but by adult people. So I have here a new program that we are implemented in the last 2 years. We close the streets of Microcentro for kids. We transform into a huge playground. So it's really nice project. And Gerald told me that I have to say something like this, my challenge and my learnings. So yesterday I was doing this, and well, I don't know if I have time, but it's already there. Is avoid starting the public works at the several time at the same moment, because it's really a mess. Afterwards, then you have to work closer with private sector, with citizen, with neighbors, with shop owners, NGOs, BIDs, IDBs, MAVIs, o sea, business improvement districts. We are working on that right now. Political will, I don't know if here are the politicians, but it's an absolute must. Our mayor was really, really involved with this program, and we need a lot of him during the processes, and show result as soon as possible. For me, is like, you have to do that, because people has to realize that the impact of the plan. And I have a phrase that I wrote in Spanish, and some guy translate for me, but for me is that we are responsible for the design of the public space in our cities. And the thing is that if we design people for cars, cars will appear. But if we design people for a city for people, people will appear. So I think that if we design livable and enjoyable city, yes, your children and your grandchildren will thank you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Clara.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, please.
Well, Clara made a 16-hour flight to share this with us, and it's actually a very interesting, successful case, I would say. It's obvious,
Yes.
like sometimes pictures talk better than words.
Yes.
It's what she showed us. So I don't know if someone wants to ask something. I, by myself, have some questions, but probably,
Está.
like, Anna, first, can you have the microphone, please? Yes.
Very interesting
Okay, thank you.
presentation for sure. One of my thoughts were, what did you do with all the cars that you had to redirect? Because in the photos of the after the works, you don't see the cars. So that must have created some kind of extra traffic in other roads. Can you tell me a
Yes.
little bit about that?
Not all the cars are banned. We have like a permits to enter for residents and for those who works in the zone, but we reduce 60% of the cars, and we have a law that prohibits between 11 to 16 the entry of cars. So we put different cameras, and just that we prohibit. And we improve, of course, the use of the public space, of the public transport system, and also the bike system.
Okay, another question? Yeah.
Hola, hola Clara. Aquí.
Hola, thanks.
I'm Portuguese. I used to live in Paris, and the mayor of Paris did a lot of work also in Paris, but now they avoid the cars. So
Yes.
people are struggling to work because transport is working, but there's a lot of people. And here, my question was a bit close to the lady over there. The cars, because you say there's 1.5 million getting to the city every day.
Yes.
I mean, how people work when they need to come with a car, when they have children, they come from far, where they park. I mean, I like green too, but
Yes.
what is the solution? And what was the solution over there to make it working?
Okay, but to the all Buenos Aires enter 1.5 million cars per day, but not only to this zone. So to this zone, 150,000 cars enter to the city. Today, like 50,000 still enter to the city with this kind of permits. We have like 8,000 permits in the zone, not in the all of the city. It's only in this zone.
So people don't get into that space, I mean, to that center with cars?
With cars, yes.
No cars?
No cars. They use public transport system, subways, bike lanes, and yes, of course, the one that we have a garage there or work there, for example, delivery, yes, they can enter to the zone.
Gracias.
Thank you. Another question? Some other question? Yes, please. Can you? Okay, thank you.
Hola. I hear that that you also have a very interesting plan, and perhaps it's already on the way, to invite the people to walk beyond the microcentro. How is this coming about?
Sorry, I don't think if I understand. If we have spent, yes. Mm-hmm. Well, in the last, we finished this plan in 2016, and after that, we extended the restrictive area to the historical district, and then to another zone also. So we are recreation this program in different parts of the city, near this spot, but also in different parts of the cities.
So that people will actually walk from outside the microcenter,
yes, and now
into
yes, and now we are working in a program that we call Buenos Aires Camina, to promote the walk, the more walks in the city, to connect different parts of the city by walk. But we have a really good network, bicycle public system, but we really believe that we have to use our feet to move for the city. Yes.
Okay. Can you pass the microphone, please?
I would like to know what are the performance indicators that you have used to measure whether what you are doing, besides being, nicer. ¿Puedo hablar en español?
Sí, me encantaría. Sí,
¿Cuáles
tengo
son
indicadores.
los indicadores de performance de sostenibilidad que usted está monitorando?
Mm-hmm. Well, the reduce of air pollution, we reduced 28% of the carbon CO2. And then, well, the visual pollution also too. But our cameras doesn't only look the cars that can enter, but they are not yes, they are not measured the carbon emissions, but we have different elements or machines that are doing that. Yes, it's like we are the indicators that we have are those: pollution, air, and well, the cars, of course.
Okay. Some final question? Yes, please. Can you, Amna? Can you help? Okay. Thank you.
When were the stages of the phases? Which phases did you include the public participation during the process of the project?
Well, yes. First of all, at the beginning, we wanted to know what the people think about this kind of project. We show a lot of pictures of different parts of the world that implemented this kind of projects. And then we design, our teams design the streets or, for example, the facades. And then during all the process, we work with the society. And then, but I remember that we have also indicators about the la renta, the income, yes, of the locals and the apartments there. So if you want, I can, yes.
Okay. Well,
yes?
Thank you, Clara.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions. Well, this is the idea, to share this kind of experiences, and showing successful or cases or photos is like the most amazing thing we can have, because change depends also on the people, like the acceptance that the people can have. So, well, our second speaker is Helen Devivo. She is the former chief city planner of Oslo, and Oslo happens to be the city that held the conference this year. So it's a very interesting thing to talk about. Please, Helen, join us. And then, thank you.
Thank you. May I first ask the technicians if you could press the button for taking the pictures every time I do this? No, I don't want, because I want to turn my sheets of paper. Oh, are you undressing me? I hope not. first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to come and talk at this event, and congratulations to Lisbon for being next year's European Green Capital. You have something to look forward to. It's been a great pleasure to have this happening in Oslo. Lisbon also has a soft spot in my heart. We have some very good friends in Leire, is it said? I don't know how it's pronounced. And we celebrated, my husband and I, our 50th, that is 100 years of living at, what was the name, Pamela Posada? Many years ago. So this city is something special for us. I will tell you about how we have worked with the Fjord City of Oslo, a big long-term redevelopment project of the city. And I will also say a bit about the lessons we've learned. Oslo is a small city, comparatively speaking, 675,000 inhabitants, so a bit bigger than Lisbon. But until recently, we were growing by between 1% and 2% in inhabitants a year. We have, for many years since the Second World War, really looked upon the waterways as a very important structure of the city. And in 2010 Comprehensive Development Plan, we added 10 silent areas. In a way, it's part of the rewilding of the city to say that part of the city should also be places for contemplation and for silence and contemplation. And we have at the moment a program that has been going on for about 30 years, I think, for opening and rehabilitating rivers. And the one I'm showing you here is one that used to be the sort of rubbish dump of the city. It runs down a valley, post-war valley, with sort of industry in the bottom and dwellings in the valley sides. And the city has been working quite hard to open and rehabilitate, take the water out of the pipelines, because that is the future. But for this to happen, it has also been important to make sure that the citizens have ownership, that they sort of appropriate and support that these waterways actually should be reopened. And to the left, you see an exhibition, an art project we had in 2004, I think. This area has a lot of immigrants. 33% of all the inhabitants are immigrants. And here you see a tree with pieces of cloth given by women from different parts of the world, or sneakers, or shorts, or whatever, and in a way being able to expose it in the public space and see we are part of this river development. In the middle, you see a youth concert under a motorway bridge just adjacent to this art exhibition. And now, for many years, every autumn, there is a light festival where all the NGOs and the inhabitants trail all the way from the top of the valley and down towards the city center with lights and different artistic activities. This is the Fjord City. To the right, you see what it looked like 20 years ago. And my lesson number one is that it's important to translate political intentions early. The local election in '99, at the time, Tory Liberal government pointed to the stars and said, we want Fjord City. And for us in the administration, it's important to listen, perhaps even before they've actually stated what they wanted themselves, and then to be able to put an agenda for them and say, is this what you would like to do? And of course also to make the project professionally or planning-wise viable. At a meta level, the Fjord City is really about giving the fjord back to the people. And to make the areas accessible, attractive, and as much as possible socially sustainable. in the Fjord City case, there are three elements that have sort of been overriding and been very important all the way along. It's the 9-kilometer-long undulating harbour promenade. It's the 13 commons, that's sort of, you know, like the English common in the middle of a village, which belongs to everybody. 13 commons that penetrate into the city fabric so that you easily can reach the sea. And it's what we have called the axis of culture, which means that I think since 2004 we said that every bay and every point of land should have some kind of public facility. And the yellow ones are not, are yet to be decided what will be. In many ways, we started a paradigm shift when we opened the new harbour promenade in 2014, created by 13 orange containers, with part of it telling their old history, part of it having this cartoon series from the 1960s when the container shipping started coming to Norway, and part of it showing the future. It's very much about new languages and new voices. And sometimes I mention what is called, it's a Danish concept called Municipality 3.0. After the war, when we were at 1.0, the inhabitants came very modestly to the city hall and asked, could they please be allowed to do this or that? In the 80s, we started participation with, I don't know, nursing homes or schools or whatever, and we discussed with the people what did they think we should do. But it was still the city who always decided what and how we were to deliver the services. At the moment, we're into the phase 3.0, which is about co-creation. It's about taking the pedestrians, the inhabitants seriously, allowing them to influence, and perhaps also to take responsibility for running or arranging things, being it exchange days for toys or soap bubble blowing. Yes. And you see how we turn the transport hierarchy on its head. Lesson number 2 is about having readable 3D visions about what one is doing. I always said to my employees, we write far too much. Write half of what you do and use drawings instead. Of course we need analysis. We needed to have a good analysis to convince the city council that the harbour authorities could do with a third of their areas, for instance. But the potential, but the gain of showing the potential and the possibilities that lie ahead are important to illustrate. Here is the new or 10-year-old National Opera and Ballet House. You can see some of the master plan for the first area we redeveloped. It is important that the city as an organization is predictable to what type of contents one wants in this process. What type of city do we want? And to clarify, I think, to the developers what we expect them to contribute with. We made a set of quality programs related to design, culture, and environment, and then we had thematic booklets showing what they should strive to achieve. And we had a very comprehensive planning obligation or urban contract system, 9 contracts, which I think gave the basis for about 50 million euros of public infrastructure investment. And that was besides what went into public transport and so on. And then it's equally important to have a predictable process. And here you see how these different documents were used from the zoning plan in 2003 and through these quality books and an architectural competition to the top right-hand side, and then the detailed project plan. And you see the river in the end having been reopened all the way up to the railway lines. I mentioned that we had an architectural competition. It was a sort of pre-programming international competition. And we had a lot of sarcasm from my colleagues, the architects. Are you having an architectural competition for something that is not going to be a building? But to us, this was important. It is quite fortunate, I think, that the infrastructure company that actually did carry out, it wasn't the city itself, but it was a coalition of different bodies that were landowners, built out all the streets and the public spaces. And Jan Gehl, an SLR landscape architect, won. And the fortunate thing was that for all these years after, more than 15 years, this infrastructure company have continued to use this very good design competence that these companies have, and it has affected the quality very much. And then, of course, the third lesson I think we learned is that, and for me that's difficult because I like all the details too, focus on the most important aspect, and for us it was public space. These buildings in the Barcode Road to the right were shaped in different particular volumetric forms due to sight lines that the Historic Monuments Officer required that we should have so that you could see the sea from different parts of the city behind. But the structure of public space, and to the left you see the railway station common, where, for instance, it's equally important to have public free benches as for the commercial benches. And all this we had to secure all the way along. And of course the differentiation between the different public spaces were important. To the right is the new Parade Street, where the historically dividing river of Akerselva, on the east side the poorer people, and on the west side of the river the more wealthier people. 300 trees to the east were from eastern countries in the world, and 300 trees to the west were from the western world. I don't think I need to say anything about the quality of the sign here. Lesson 4. We may dream about the perfect city and know exactly what it is. However, it's also important to allow for the unexpected, the temporary or the semi-permanent ones. And interventions that can take place like that often create the future of the city. Here is what we call Losetra. Seter is a small holding in the mountain where the farmer allows the cows to graze in the summer. And this is a seter for bread baking. And it is together with different types of allotments, all NGO and voluntary work. What I just talked about was also about a big art project that has been going on for 10 years, and I'll say a bit more about that here. The new city library, you see the opera to the right, and the new city library will be opening in May. And the interior is like a cathedral looking out to the city around, all in modern architecture, except one item, and that's the room to the left. This is an art project by Katie Patterson, Scottish artist, Future Library. Each year, for 100 years, one is going to cut down a tree in the green belt of Oslo, make paper, and then the author, Margaret Atwood is one of them, for instance, write a novel that will be closed off in these glooming shelves or drawers, you see them, and they will stay there for 100 years, and then they will all be opened. It's very much about trust and how you can actually allow for all the technical and concrete stuff, but also for the airy dreams that we all have. In this time of biodiversity and climate adaptation, the concept of rewilding has come upon us quite strongly. As an architect, I think everything should be tidy and clear and clean. But here, this thing of allowing, we started early with requirements for green roofs. In 2003, 50% of all roofs should be green, and of course it improves the temperature and sort of soaks off surface water. But as time has passed, of course, this thing of requiring that you should actually have 40 centimeters or 80 centimeters of earth that could be cultivated is something new. And beehives, for instance, we also have in Björvika. And the interesting thing is that it always activates people. People are so interested and they want to come up on these roofs and they want to participate. Gerald asked me to talk about some failures, the same as to Clara. And I allowed myself to say almost failure, because this is an area that is completed. The museum that you see to the left, designed by Renzo Piano. I was very happy when we, after a while, convinced him to build a smaller building so we could keep the big park that the city wanted. But one very hot summer, the people living on in this project fenced off the area and didn't want to allow people to come in to swim from the park or for the jetty sticking out in the top and right corner of the picture. And of course then the city planning department had to write a letter saying that these areas are zoned for public use. They are owned privately, but they are zoned for public use. And afterwards, my deputy mayor, who was a conservative man, he said, Ellen, we must remember all the important spaces for people to get to have to be zoned public. I think that was quite a wise word from a conservative politician. And initially, Renzo Piano, yes, I said, he had designed a much bigger building, a building with a much bigger footprint. But after some weeks, when we postponed having a meeting with him, he came back and he said he'd redesigned the building, and this is what is there. And this edge, we talk a lot about the edge these days, edge between buildings, edge between water and land and so on, are important elements. So the right to the city is very much about the edge which we have to cater for in the planning process. This is an area that has not been developed yet. We started the planning process 12 years ago, and 6 years has passed with the plan being well placed in City Hall. And it was partly due to a struggle between the harbour authorities, the landowners and the city about who was going to pay for the infrastructure and so on. Now the sitting city government has forwarded a plan. And I think the important thing then is that the real political intention and the real ability to carry on that attention very persistently over a long time is important. That is something that I think all cities that want to drive change need. The third possible, I call it, because it may still be a failure, is about, we did say in political jargon and documents that this should be sustainable housing as well. It never became social housing in this area. The housing is not very cheap. And perhaps that the fact that it did take 12 years perhaps will come out positively in the end after all, because now the city government this spring has forwarded a new strategy for affordable housing, and I really do hope they will be able to carry that out. The city plan has to last longer than the ship. City fabric structures must be robust and sustainable for many generations to come. We need to have this clear so that the city fabric is what we design and not the individual buildings. Fortunately, and of course importantly, people have to support and appreciate what we do, and it's been a lot of struggle and a lot of strife, a lot of media and all these kind of things. But when we now ask them about the fjord city, a lot of people actually appreciate what we've done. And even this Sørenga, which is a new sea bathing arena, within 9 months, including 6 months of winter, almost half of the population had been there and used this area. And then I sort of felt that, yes, it was good that we kept attention to the public space. My last foil now. Be strong and lenient simultaneously, almost Zen-like, I would say. Be clear and persistent about what your goals is, especially for the urban structure, but attentive and listen carefully to the other participants about what type of proposal and compromise you could have when it comes to detail. And do not expect to be a pop star while in office. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Helen, for such an amazing experience to be shared. I was in Oslo this summer, and now I checked that everyone has been in the fjord city. I did all of those places, so now I feel happy about that. Like, I did the whole checklist about that. Good to know, good to know. Well, maybe some questions to Helen and her very interesting experience. Please, is there a microphone? Yeah.
This
Please.
lady.
I'm a little shy. So I am Isabel from Guimarães, a small city, also Portuguese, of course. And I want to ask you if you feel that the projects actually have an end, or when you are planning a project, do you see the end of the project and afterwards it's finished and you don't do anything else, or?
That's a very philosophical question.
Yes, I am a very passionate and philosophic person.
I think urban development never ends. You can have pockets of projects, like some of these things I showed you are completed. But of course they will, already the barcode is starting a process of being refurbished and done up, and we reflect why didn't we ask for better energy consumption and so on that building. So I think it will always continue. But if the city plan and the public space structure is robust enough, that will stay on forever, I think. Maybe be given new uses, but it will have the ample sort of spaciousness and a structure where the sun always shines in and so on. So it allows for new uses as time passes.
Thank you.
Other question, please. The microphone, Dagim, here. Yes, sir.
Diogo Teixeira. I'm a resident of Lisbon. And thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. I think nowadays we are struggling in the cities with inclusion, with engagement of citizens, with the environment, etc. We've seen some examples from Argentina to solve some of the problems, and now a lot of very interesting solutions from Oslo. I think, nevertheless, that one of the main problems in the cities, and probably eventually for humanity nowadays, is attention. It's about distraction, and that we are not really present, that we are not paying attention to our environment, to the people around us. And that could be, I think, a solution for solving so many problems in the cities. And there you presented these spaces for contemplation and silence. Could you please develop a little bit more about what has been done in Oslo about that? Thank you.
I wish I could tell you that we've done some marvelous things. I think the basic thing is, of course, to secure such spaces. I remember one day when I went into the local radio, BBC kind of thing, and when I came out sort of 8:30 in the morning, there was a lady rolling together her yoga mat, dead in the center of the city. I think contemplation doesn't need special designs, but it needs being sheltered from traffic noise and from different types of pollution. And of course at night it needs to be well lit for safety reasons. And And I always say to my colleagues in the planning department, start with the public space. What is the most splendid space you could think of you would like to sit down and just relax? And then you can put all the buildings in the steep part of the site or the shadowy part of the site. But start always with the public space. It's not a very good question, but
Yeah.
no, it's not a very good answer. Sorry.
Well, thank you, Helen. Please thank Helen. We are going to have more time after we're done with the speakers. So if you still have questions, hold them because we are going to have more time to have some questions like more close. Please, our third speaker is Maria Vasilaku. She's the former vice mayor of Vienna. She has 10 years of experience also in her charge, and she was in charge of the transition agenda in Vienna. So thank you, Maria, to share your experience. We're going to hear you. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. I am very excited and very happy to be here with you in Lisbon. But for the next couple of minutes, I will take you together with me for a short trip to Vienna. So enjoy. Now, Vienna is a rapidly growing city. It's a city of approximately 2 million people at the heart of Central Europe. And it is competing in terms of growth with Berlin each year. These are the two fastest growing cities in the German-speaking area. Right now we're growing at a pace of approximately 25,000 people per year, which means that we have to build a small town each and every year in addition to what we are. Just to give you an impression, we have grown by Oslo within the last 33 years, ever since I arrived in Vienna. I'm originally a migrant. Speaking of this, we're also a very diverse city. So more than 40% of our population have a migration background, pretty much like myself. And we're a city, I think, that has realized that urban growth is always an opportunity to transform your city and to get things better, of course, if you design it the right way. And we must be doing something right, because you may have heard that we are regularly ranked as the world's most livable city, example given according to Mercer for 10 years in a row, which actually correspond to the 10 years that I've been deputy mayor. But no jokes. It was not my work alone. Anyway, what I will be concentrating upon in the next minutes is actually the interface between public space design, urban transformation, and public transport, actually mobility design. How these things can work together in order to transform a city and to make it a more livable place. Speaking of livability, when politicians speak of livability, you should always ask what it is that they actually mean. And I say, to put it in simple words, the city, a livable city, is a place where people live because they want to, not because they have to. Which actually leads me to my next very, very crucial point to my philosophy. You always need an urban philosophy behind things. And I found designing cities around the needs of children is a very, very good idea. So my crucial claim is a city that's good for children is good for every one of us. It's good for every generation. Because what we find good for children, what children love, is actually what we all love as well. We want our children to be able to grow up in a safe environment, to have contact to nature, to be able to move around freely and play, to have contact to water. Water is extremely important. All these qualities you have to provide for at the heart of a city in a transformed manner, of course. If you do so, and if the city is also affordable at the same time, besides being very powerful against suburbanization, which is another story, it means actually producing great cities, great public spaces, great places to live. Which actually brings me to that. Is this a great place to, what's great about this? Is it good for children? Do we like it? I guess no. What about this? It's all a matter of design. We could actually, this is a new urban core. A new urban quarter. The lake that you see is actually an artificial lake. We could have used the space that you see here for the lake and everything to do this. But we didn't. We used it in another way. This is what I'm talking about when I say actually urban growth means a chance, an opportunity to make your city a better place. But what is even more influential, and this is the last thing I have wanted to say in terms of background and philosophy, you can see there's a quote up there, the outside of the buildings is the inside of the city. This is a quote actually by Jane Jacobs that has been extremely influential to my thinking. And that actually leads us to realize that public space is actually where the city materializes. It is where the city is. It is where the city happens. So actually, if we think about mobility, if we think about the way we move around in our cities, this is interlinked to the way we plan public space, and this is actually also interlinked to the very, very central question of what is the street there for? Who is the street there for? Is it actually not all about rethinking our streets? So now I have arrived to mobility strategy in Vienna. As you can see, we have quite a good model split. Right now, 73% of all everyday trips are done by public transport, cycling or walking. It's only 27% of all everyday trips that are done by private car, and we want to get it down to 20% by the year 2025. If you ask me, we're not going to be making it. We've done a lot right. I'll be talking about in a second, but we would need to be much, much, much more decisive in order to get down to this 20%. Even so, we're on a good way. We have an excellent public transport system. It is very, very dense. So you can see there's 9 commuter lines, there's 5 subway lines, there's 29 tram lines, there's buses. We keep expanding it, you name it. This is what it looks like in terms of commuter lines, subway and trams. You can see also where the weaknesses are. This is what it looks like, just to give you an idea, in the central parts of the city, let's say approximately 2/3 of the surface of the city, you never have to walk for longer than 3 minutes to get to the next station, and never have to wait for longer than 3 minutes in rush hour for the next thing to arrive, which is really a dense system. But the sensation is that it's cheap. Now, we made it cheaper, considerably cheaper, because we were asking ourselves, what is it that we can do so that we can have people use it more? And we came up with the idea we could make it cheaper, besides expanding it. Now, we think all it's common sense. You won't believe what kind of a debate it was. We had experts arriving from other parts of the world, Germany especially. Experts always come from Germany to Austria. And explaining to us that this will not work. People don't care about the fares. They just care about quality and intervals. So if you make it cheaper, you're going to be losing money only and nothing will happen. It was the other way around. As a matter of fact, we made it as cheap as 365 euro per year, which means for €1 per day, you can use this public transport system as often as you want to. So this is what it costs. Yes. And this is what it looks like. Everybody has something like this. In terms of numbers, we, in the meantime, have more than 800,000 people who own something like this, plus the students, plus the pupils who have even cheaper fares. So it's more than 1 million people out of a population of less than 2 million. So you can imagine what has happened. It's a revolution. And declining private car use at the same time. We have the lowest private car ownership within Austria right now, and once again it keeps declining. But what was even more powerful was that we combined it with the expansion of parking space management to the suburbs. which was extremely controversial as well. There was even 100,000 people signing for a referendum against it, which is a lot of people in a city of not yet 2 million. And it was even worse because it is not allowed to have referenda on fees in Vienna and in Austria. So the people who organized it knew that we would have to say no to this referendum, and this would make us in general, and me specifically, even more unpopular. We said no, we passed it, we pulled it through, let's put it this way, and it became a huge success. Because overnight, not only private car use declined by altogether 6%, but what's even better, what we gained out of it was space. Space, so much space. And if you ask me, I believe the most valuable good that we have in our cities is space, because space is a limited edition. You can do anything you want, but you cannot have more space in the already built parts of the city. So what did we do with this space that we gained? Of course, it's about cycling. I'll skip this very quickly. All cities do whatever they can to boost cycling for very, very good reasons. In our case, we have quite a robust main cycling route network. And there's also a story that goes with it, because we have 23 boroughs, and not all borough mayors are cycling enthusiasts. So we had the problem that some would engage into planning cycling paths, others would not, and there was no network, which was actually a very dangerous situation as well. So we found a way to work around it, and we introduced the idea of a main cycling network. This is the responsibility of the municipality as a whole. And then there is the subordinate cycling network, which is within the responsibilities of the boroughs. This way we were able to move about the whole issue of cycling in a comprehensive manner. And then, of course, it's about walking. And if you ask me what is the most powerful indicator if you're on a right track or not, then I will say it's about counting how many people walk. It's about counting pedestrians in public spaces. And if you can, also comparing the pace. If it's a nice place, if the place works beautifully, then people will slow down automatically and spend more time. So we designed a whole strategy around the whole issue of walkability and, once again, rethinking transforming public space. Now, this is Central Europe's longest shopping street. This is what it looked like, and this is what it looks like today. And yes, it's been extremely controversial. Now, we engaged very, very early in 3 cycles of public consultation, as you can see, immediately on the street, but also using social media and. This is just another perspective of how it was done. Collecting people's needs and ideas, then launching a competition based on all this in order to produce a wonderful design that introduced seating and water tables for children to play with water, and all the beautiful things people have wanted to have, you name it. But still, this is what happened. I mean, they are actually demonstrating against the deviation of a bus line through the street. They didn't want to have it. And these ones demonstrate against myself and actually against cycling, right? This is the most ugly picture of myself that I've ever seen. But yes, but that was it. That was it. It was 3 years to cope with this. And behind all this, there were also many powerful stakeholders. It was the taxi drivers union. It was the Chamber of Commerce, which is actually something we hear all the time. You're ruining my city. You're ruining our businesses. Nobody's going to come shopping anymore. This won't work. It works in other places of the world, but not with us. This is everything we know. And what happens is all of the time, you have, this is an old quote by Machiavelli, who is a misunderstood personality anyway in history, who said that when you try to change something, you have fierce oppositions from the ones who fear disadvantages from themselves, whereas no support from the ones who are going to be benefiting. And it takes quite a while for the people who will benefit to realize that they have to organize themselves as well and do something. Now, what we did was we learned from Stockholm. So we decided to do a test phase. We took out all of the cars without reconstructing the street. We let it be for about 9 months, and then we had a referendum, which we won, because after people started experiencing the difference, and even though it was not yet reconstructed, many more people became in favor. Oh, and what we also did, because we went through hell, within these 9 months, you cannot imagine what went on in Vienna. And no, we did not get everything right. Just to give you one example, if I had a chance to redo it again, I mean, you see me there laughing and smiling, I was in hell, right? But if I had a chance to redo it again, I would, for instance, have had constructed at least part of it so that people can experience the way it will be looking like. This way was just ugly, but the cars were not there. Still, they had space to use, and they loved it. Anyway, once again, what is very, very important, and I think that this is a very important lesson in this respect, was that Stockholm had introduced the city toll and had told people, we'll test it for a year, and after the year, if you don't want it, we're taking it away. You will decide. And in our case, it was exactly the same. We said, if you're in favor of it, we'll redo it. If not, it remains the way it was. So the referendum went out in a positive manner. Once again, this is what it looks like now. This is just, the opening day. And right now, if you ask them, they will say 75% say that they would have voted with a yes now. So this is also an indicator of the difference there. Now, here you can see, for example, what followed. What followed was that people owning real estate owners and shop owners in other parts of Vienna started wanting to have this kind of transformation for the streets themselves. So in the next step, we had real estate owners saying, well, we could pay for it. All of it, or at least large parts of it, but would you please redo our street? So what you can here see on the back is a street, this is very central, which is being right now turned into shared space with a substantial financial contribution from real estate owners along the street. It will be opening in 1 week from now, and this is what it looks like. So you can see how things move on and how people who were fiercely against it start realizing the benefits and may turn to be allies in the end. And this is what was published last week. I'm not deputy mayor anymore, but after the Chamber of Commerce released a press release asking the city to invest in one shared space in every borough in Vienna. Yes, that was actually the late recognition that this is the way to go about it. Now the lesson is, you told it before, you have to go through it. You have to go through it. You have to keep talking to people. You have to engage people. You have to do test phases. And last but not least, you have to look as early as possible for allies. And because opposition will always be able to organize themselves, but you need allies that will also come together to support a transformatory way. Which brings me to the last point I have, and then I'm done. Of course, there needs to be a strategy behind all this. What you can here see is our strategy of combining public spaces with pedestrian boulevards, so pretty much like in Argentina. And we also, I think what we learned out of all this fierce opposition in the first years of our transformation agenda was you have to engage the people and you have to give them the opportunity to transform their streets themselves. It does not need to be a top-down agenda. It has to be a bottom-up agenda. But then you have to enable this kind of involvement. So we introduced a small grant of 4,000 euro, and everybody who has an idea can just form a parking space in their neighborhood in order to transform it in a small corner, a parklet, whatever. And the only precondition is that it has to be open to everybody for use without having to consume. And here you can see what emerged out of all this. And yet another one. We've had more than 300 such projects in the last 3 years in Vienna. It's a huge success, and it's spreading all over the city. And suddenly, on a dime, the whole city changes. So, here's yet another example of a temporary market, and there's festivals you can do to conquer space, and there's temporary street closures for children to play, and there's allocated space for people to do their parties. And it's about new urban quarters with vast accessible green spaces that also become part of the overall concept of the city. And thanks, last but not least, I say it's about thinking out of the box and thinking differently. What you can here see is actually a traffic safety campaign we launched some years ago. And because people hate traffic lights, we wanted to make traffic lights funny. And because we also had the Eurovision Song Contest, we wanted to send out a message about love and respect and openness. And we combined these two things, resulting actually in worldwide media attention like never before. But it just shows, once again, that it's about thinking strategically, holistically, thinking out of the box, and, yes, thinking smart. Thanks.
Thank you. Like cases like these are like hard to say what's the next step, because like the results are very advanced. Once the people, like the people who live, get involved at the level of being willing to pay or to share the cost of the improvements, we are talking about a very high level of commitment and to share a shared vision of between the government, like the local authorities, and the people who live, which is one of the most desired states when we talk about smart cities. So, well, thank you for sharing. I don't know if we have some questions. Surely we have, like, questions. 1, 2, yes, please. Ragim, the microphone, can you handle it?
Thank you very much for your presentation. Very quick question. We saw some demonstrations against the changes. You're not vice mayor any longer. Is that the result of the demonstrations?
No. No. But to be honest, recognition in terms of acknowledging that this whole agenda was a good idea comes always late. Still, it takes about 10 years, if you ask me, to go through the necessary cycles so that you have results and so that people start thinking differently, appreciating the way the city has changed, and in the end also acknowledging that there's some people, it need not be one person, it's always a group of people. If you ask me, I always say, if you want to change a city, you need approximately 40 people. But that's another story. Systemically, you need approximately 40 people, and you have in front well, in the shop window you have something like 2 to 3 people who stand for it in public. In the worst case, only 1. So acknowledgement for these people comes also within a period of about 7 to 8 years. But if you ask me, and I will give you an honest answer, if you ask me, is there a recognition that what has been done was good work, I will tell you yes. If you ask me if they love me, no. And even though now they say that was good work, they don't love me more than they used to love me. But it's not about being a pop star, thanks very much about this. It's not about being loved, and it's not about being popular. Because if you want to be popular, then you end up with Donald Duck in Parliament, right? So my lesson out of all this is that you have to have a vision, you have to have a team, you have to work on an agenda, you have to want to make the difference, and in the end, it is, and I have no example from anywhere in Europe that it's not a success. So if you ask me why I stopped, that is a very, very simple reason. It would have been my 5th election. And there comes a point, you know, where you have to change something in life.
Okay, thank you. Another question? Yes.
Hello. Hello. I'm also from Lisbon, and I was very curious to hear about the test phase that you had on that particular project of the street. So I was wondering how did you decide how long you would test that particular project for? And then you said there was a referendum in the end of the test phase. What was the participation like? It was a municipal, I imagine, right, referendum. What was the participation like, numbers-wise?
Okay. Now, we sat together and thought about doing a test phase of about a year originally, because this is normally what is done in cities. But then we found that it was such a heated discussion in the meantime, and so fierce opposition, that we have to be honest, we didn't want to go through hell for a year. We knew at the same time that 6 months is too short a period, because it takes a few months until people get used to the new situation, and then it takes another few months until they conquer space, and then you need another few months until everybody has a definite opinion on the whole issue. So this is where we came up with these 9 months. It was kind of a yes. And now, what we also did, and I did not mention, was to use these 9 months to knock on every door. We went to the households and knocked on 30,000 doors. Not everybody opened, but many opened. We had many interesting discussions, and I think that this is also a reason why the turnaround happened. We had a very high participation at the referendum. I don't know the exact number anymore, but it was more than 70%. It was a local referendum because the street goes through 2 boroughs, and we said we will ask these 2 boroughs and not the whole city. And this was yet another issue. Why ask only these 2 boroughs? And we said because there is quite an issue, and it's a democracy issue, when it comes to asking people with regard to traffic concepts. Because if you ask people, then the group of the people who benefit from a measure and the people who have the disadvantages should be quite a homogeneous group, right? If they're not homogeneous, then you may have a result that is actually a systemic result, but not something that has to do with democracy. So we said we want the people that have the disadvantages, and the disadvantages are that they cannot drive with their car through that street and they cannot cross it anymore. There's only 2 crossings. And they have the benefits, cleaner air and so on and so forth, you name it. And they have to decide. So this is how we went about it. And we won by a margin of 53% in favor. So it was actually, yes, quite tight.
Okay, thank you. We have another question here, maybe? Yes, please. You have the microphone. Please.
Hello. Hi, my name is Miguel. Congratulations for your success. I visit Vienna since 2003, so 16 years going there. I see all the differences, and it's amazing. Congratulations. As a pedestrian walking on the streets that doesn't live there, I find it was a huge improvement. Congratulations for that. You did mention that it was important in this project to have your alliances from early. Can you elaborate on who were your allies during this great battle?
The allies were large retail. The opponents were small retail. The allies were students. The allies were children with, families with small children. The opponents were many, many people from older generations. And that was just to give you a few examples. Then we had opposition, fierce opposition from several media, but we had other media that were in favor. And we had fierce opposition from the Chamber of Commerce at the beginning and throughout actually several phases, and had support by youth groups, by NGOs, environmental NGOs, just to give you a few examples. So I think that the whole idea of having the referendum was actually the turning point where people who were in favor realized they have to do something, otherwise they will lose. So in the end, it was about also mobilizing the strength of all the people once again that were in favor. But believe me, what I have learned the most from was after that introducing this community grants scheme that I have shown you. If I had done this 5 years earlier, it would have been so much easier to transform this street. Because suddenly you have a totally different feel in neighborhoods all over the city. And you have people coming up with their own ideas, and this has a mobilizing effect that is much, much, much more worth than, you know, having the city doing car wars for 3 years and then having a referendum.
Yes, please, Helen. Can I?
It's also about political processes. Could you reflect a bit on, in your experience, how could one work so that it doesn't become a struggle between who is in position and who is in opposition?
Okay. Now, this is this is a very good question. I'm afraid that the answer is not the same from city to city and has pretty much to do with a specific political situation. In our case, we were the first coalition between the Social Democratic Party and the Green Party. And you guess I'm from the Green Party. We were the small part of it. And Austria is a federation. So the federal government was in a coalition between the Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats. And in all other federal states within the Austrian Federation, the Christian Democrats were in government. So the only place where they were not in government was Vienna. So it was pretty easy, if you looked at it as a chess game, right, to know that there is most probably no way to have very important stakeholders collaborating. because it was also a political game. If you don't have such an extreme situation where you know that everybody will use these 3 years to see, will we withstand this, or are we going to be drawn apart? And if you have a somewhat more normal situation, I personally believe the only way to go about it is to do proper stakeholder management straight from the beginning. And of course, the best way to go about it is to see that you have the Chamber of Commerce, that you have the Chamber of Industry, that you have labor, that you work together with the unions, that you have students groups, whatever it is, and that you have them on board before you launch, you embark in such a project. And there are many, many cases where you can see that this has happened.
Okay, thank you. Well, one final question, please. You have the microphone? Yes.
Angela from Los Angeles, California. I have a question regarding the smaller companies who were not for the changes that were there. Were there any subsidies or grants continuing for them during the construction projects where it kept businesses not generating the revenue that they were prior to?
Mm-hmm. Yes, no, I'm afraid no. This is a question that they raise all the time, and they're right, because the construction phase is always a problem. They face the same problem when we do construction works for the metro, which we're having right now, exactly the same. The problem is that if you have this kind of subsidies, then the whole budget will explode. And it will turn out to be unaffordable to do transformation. On the other hand, the benefits that they have when they withstand this period are standing no relation to the disadvantages they've had during construction phase. If you ask me, what I believe is that it's a little bit more complicated in terms of you have small retail right now having to withstand pressure from large chains on the one hand, and what's even worse, pressure from internet shopping on the other hand. And what really kills them is internet shopping. And they're so afraid and they're so under pressure that they will oppose to any kind of change because they say, who knows if we will withstand, the construction phase. But the only way they can withstand internet shopping is when they are situated in attractive public spaces. Because if it's beautiful, I will go for a walk and I'll go shopping. If it's ugly, I'll use my mobile phone. And this is actually the discussion we have to do with them.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Well, thank you to our speakers. And well, finally, I'm looking forward to the conference of next year and also the European Green Capital of next year. Of course, we need to hear about some leadership, local leadership. So please welcome to Mr. Fernando Medina, the mayor of Lisbon City. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you all here. It's an important day here at the City Council, because of the City Council we are in meeting since 9 a.m. till now to approve the budget. So any good suggestions or green suggestions, you can go there, pressure my opposition to approve them. They are still in there. I hope that we win the vote, even with me being here. Let me first to give you all a warm welcome here, the ones that are not from Lisbon. And allow me to give a very strong and warm welcome here to Maria. I have to tell her a small story. I think 3 years ago, we met here in Lisbon in a meeting about European cities and Asian cities. And we had some time to discuss the problems of sustainable development. And one of the stories that Maria told us, it was about the transport system in Vienna. And in a certain way of our conversation, she was telling me that in Vienna they had a transport system that cost 360 euros a year. And I said, 306 euros, this is €1 per day. And I say, you are joking with me. In Vienna, you probably win, salaries are probably the double than in Portugal. You pay €1 per day and the system works? No, it works perfectly. And I recall the name, I recall the number, you just sold that year 900,000 global tickets. That idea continued to roll in my head every single day after that. Then when we find the exactly right moment, we copied that idea. We sold it to the Prime Minister. That we had some luck because he was previous mayor of Lisbon, my predecessor, so he knows very well the problem. And I said to him, what do you think about this? I just emailed him, forwarded him a notice, a news about the Vienna system. And I said, why are you bothering about money? Just think, €1 per day. Can you imagine that? And he continued to talk about that idea every night, because I know him. When he sees a bright idea, it's so powerful, that idea, that he keeps in our head. So in last year, we made a proposal to the government to approve a system of a single pass for the cities, €1 per day, and for the whole metropolitan area, that is much bigger than Vienna, 2.7 million people, 18 municipalities, all types of transport, 3,000 square kilometers. You can use it, every types of transport for a month, for €40 a month. If you are less than 12, you pay 0. If you are more than 65, you pay €20 per month. And if you are a student in a higher education institution, you have a reduction on tariffs. So we made the major reduction on transport prices that was ever made in the metropolitan area. And the most amazingly is that, I should have a card for you, but you show your card, I can show ours now. It's this. Most amazing, it's the results. In one single year, we have more than 30% of increase on public transport tariffs, passes and uses. We have a completely integrated system because we put trains, we put the boats, we put the buses, we put everything inside the same system because it was a confusion, split by everywhere, different systems. People begin to use it, and probably the most striking thing, the people that raised amazingly the use of public transport, can you imagine what they were at the beginning? Elderly people, retired people. Retired people that now they find me on the streets and they say, or in the bus when you go opening a new bus line, and they say, this is my freedom. It's amazing because if we think, it's obviously that it would be retired people, because workers, they have to go to work, even if they pay more. They have to work on public transport, or they have to go by car, because they need mobility to go to work. Students is the same thing. But retired people know, when the prices went up, people just simply didn't move. They kept in their homes. They were not fully citizens in a city, in a metropolitan area. They were simple half citizens' right, because they didn't have the right to move. So when we gave them this, and now they can use it for €20 a month in 18 municipalities, so they can go by the north of the area of Lisbon to the sands of Setúbal. They see dozens of UNESCO historical World Heritage. They circulate everywhere by all types of transports, and they say, this is my freedom. The second, it is kids and students. It's raising a lot, the use, because families think that it's a very good solution. And we are just in the beginning. So there is nothing more that I can thank you for this, that it was enlightening us with a single idea, so powerful, so bright, that we could import it here to Portugal. Obviously, a lot of people are thinking on that before, but the magic of €1 per day it is not paying the price of transport, but is the cost of an administrative solution that gives mobility as a right to all citizens. It was a great and a major idea that we took from Maria. So thank you very much, and it was a great example.
Questions.
Thank you.
Questions too?
Now you can put in the presentation that you have responsibilities on the Vienna system and also in the Lisbon system and in the Porto system, because we got that idea from you. Let me just speak you very briefly about what I think that is the most challenging issues that we have to tackle in this moment in Lisbon, that is basically have the coordination and basically balance the three dimensions of the sustainable process. In a sustainable agenda, the biggest challenge for a mayor, for a team that is leading a city, is about how can we deal simultaneously at the same times with three goals that in many ways they conflict with each other. First is about the economical dimension of sustainability. A city and a region is not sustainable if it doesn't have a strong economic base. Cities raise and cities die. The only way of a city or a region to be sustainable if we are able to produce and retain the talent that it is needed to the economic process and to the economic life of the community. There is no base for a city or a region if we don't have a strong economy, if we don't have employments for students, for young people, if we don't have works and employments that gives the ability of pay for the social system that we aim to pay for the pensions for the elderly and to the retired people. The basis is an economy. We have to have an economy. And how can we have an economy and a strong economy that creates opportunities, jobs? The second is about the social dimension of the sustainability. There is no sustainability and there is no future for a city or a region if we are not the place of opportunities for all. We see all around the world, we are seeing on TVs every day. We see, for instance, in Chile, they are discussing metro tickets, but the issue is not metro tickets, the trigger is metro tickets. When we go all along, we see the problems of inequality and the problems of prices and the problems of living conditions appearing everywhere. We open and we see everywhere this happening in the world. When we see in Seattle or in California what's happening about housing crisis, where one of the richest regions in the world is suffering a house crisis where more than middle classes is living on like homeless in that region. A development process to be sustainable has to be a development process that goes for all. It has to be an inclusive development process. But the most challenging is that our process of development now is in itself producing inequalities. It's a conflict process because as we go, as we are more successful as a global city, we have to be aware that we are not reducing inequalities, and we are raising and not reducing the risks of inequalities. Because in this process of Lisbon, that has been very successful in the last years, much more people coming here, much more employment appearing, much more IT companies coming to Lisbon, a very good touristic destination, etc., etc., etc. But this is opening the gap inside Lisbon. And the gap is everywhere. The gaps are everywhere. It's between young people and old people. Old people are not inside this first league, are getting behind in a number of dimensions. It's inside the group of young people, because in the young people, we have the graduates of the best universities that connect with the best students all over the world. They are globally connected with the guys from San Francisco, Singapore, Beijing, Vienna, London, and Paris, and so on. They are completely connected with each other in a global network of global citizens, but they are so near of those guys, and they are completely apart of the guy of the same age that doesn't finish upper secondary, that is living 3 kilometers from him in the neighborhood next door. And this is opening the gap. Because as our society and our city is more demanding on knowledge, for us to be more successful, we have to have more activities that have high-skilled human resources, motivated, multi-skilled human resources. In the middle of an IT revolution, we have those companies and those skills that are more needed. At the same time, we have more people that don't get to this first league at the same speed. And this is a major issue. How can we put together all in the boat? The third one is obviously the traditional ones, about the poor people, the homeless, about different groups, minorities, about foreigners. And we are very proud here of Lisbon of being in a world that is becoming very dark in many dimensions, and in many cities and in many countries. We are very proud that we are a very open, tolerant society as a country and as a city, and that we have a good motto that is saying that we are an open city, a city that welcomes all to live here. And this is true. I never expected that I was going to say this, and as anyone was giving me any applause for that. Being an open and tolerant society, it is the society where I always lived. We were a dictatorship till 1974, and I was very lucky because I was born in 1973. I never got arrested, never had to get a permit to get out of the country. Freedom of speech, well, my parents sometimes said, shut up, but that's life, not censorship. But the question is that we have here, and we are very aware, even my generation still is very aware about the costs and about what was the fight to win against the closed society and the closed times of darkness of those times. But the question is that in the world, we are not going in the same direction. So it's quite amazing for us to be in the same battle again. But we are very aware of this battle, a battle for openness, for tolerance, for ability for everyone to live in a society. And this is a major issue. It's about social inclusion and about the future of the city. How can we keep this in the world that is going other ways? And the third and last dimension, just to finish, is about many issues that we're talking here before, that is about the environmental sustainability, so the environmental dimension of sustainability. We can only be sustainable if our process of development is able of not consuming more resources that we can produce, that at the same time can be an active force for decarbonize of all society, to share, to make our part in this major global task that we have, that is fighting climate change, and at the same time using our voice to mobilize others and to mobilize energies. Many times I say here in Lisbon that obviously the battle against climate change is not going to be won or lost in Lisbon. It is not. By the way, here in Portugal we are very proud because we just peaked emissions some years ago. We are just lowering emissions now because a major breakthrough in energy production that we made some years ago, and now we are continuing. The last auction that the government made for the solar energy, it was so effective that the prices after 37 companies bidding for solar production made the price on solar lower than coal. So the last coal centrals in Portugal are going to close in 2023. The last one in the end of 2021, the last one in 2023, and we will keep our base based on renewable energy. A rising number of days of energy is produced now, more than 100% of all renewable sources. And now we are following in next tasks about decarbonizations on transports and mobility, a big task for the city. And a third area, very important, about construction materials, energy efficiency, so the third big battlefield that we have to tackle. But the issue that I want to point is that I don't tell to Lisbon that we are going to win this battle here. It's not true. A single factory in China produces more CO2 emissions than all the city of Lisbon. But the question is not that. The question is that this is a global battle. This is not an addiction or a sum of individual battles. This is a global one. So we have to do our share, and we have to do more than it was supposed to be our share. Because we have to compensate others that are not making it at the same speed, or they cannot make it at the same speed. The second and more important, we have to use the voice of the cities. We have to use our power. We have to use our voices. We have to be in the front line of our example to saying that we are mobilized to this battle about climate change and about environmental sustainability. So we have a huge program on that, and that's why, and I'm closing with this, we have in our, when we were awarded the prize of the European Green Capital of 2020, obviously it was not because we are the greenest capital of Europe. There are some that are greener than us. In North Europe, a lot of them are much more greener than we are. But we won the distinction by two reasons. First, about the speed of the achievements that we made in the last decade. On water consumption, on energy production, on converting green areas, urban areas to green areas, on the evolution that were made in very different fields, in the environmental dimension of sustainability. But more important, it was about what we said that we were going to make with the prize. The prize is not a recognition of the past. The prize is a voice to the action in the future. So what we are going to make on the Green Capital 2020 is not putting a lot of effort of speaking to people that already think like we think. It's to mobilize all society to make their share and to make new projects. It can be small projects of environmental communication and information in schools. It can be mid-sized projects like making solar production in the rooftops of our schools, using the fact that we are the capital with more solar areas, ours in Europe, and we can go to much bigger projects like the bus fleet, electrical bus fleet, or creating a system of the reutilization of water all around the city, or creating green parks of 5 hectares inside and the middle of the city, or renewing the riverfront, or creating areas that we can use more efficiently the water from the river. So 2020 is going to be this. It is going to be a global mobilization of the city, of the companies, of the NGOs, of the schools, of the teachers, of the students, of all the community to this great agenda, and to be this great agenda that could mobilize all as a community. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for listening to me for these minutes. And thank you again, Maria, for your example that changed effectively Lisbon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, for such important criteria. It's very inspiring to hear this kind of clear criteria about the problems and the issues of sustainability from the Mayor of Lisbon. So that only makes more exciting the conference of the next year. So probably we are going to have some questions. Probably we all have questions. So maybe 1 or 2 questions, like for this moment. Yes, please.
Thank you. Congratulations for your speech. It was really impressive. I'm Susana Neto. I'm the president of the Portuguese Water Association. I was almost raising some of this darkness side before, and I didn't. So I'm glad that you did, because you could do it in a much better way. I think that in this afternoon we could listen to many very nice experiences and good practices, but we didn't listen so much about this dark side that exists, and that is very worrying. And one of the words that you told at start, the context, is really important. All these lessons have to be translated into different contexts. And in a metropolitan area, the access to the center and mobility has a different meaning as it has in some of the experiences that were shown here. People struggle to get to work 2 or 3 hours a day each way. And that is the mobility that we can have to also consider. And in terms of accessibility to services and to quality of life, the world is really a divide. And that is something that we need to face in Europe, not only for the good parts of Europe, but for the part of Europe that are receiving people from the bad parts of the other parts of the world. So we need to be very careful about keeping in our minds this dark side in all moments and for all our lessons, all our discussions, and this is unfortunately something that we need to keep in mind.
Okay. Thank you. Some question?
Thank you very much. I'm Cassia from Youth Climate Leaders. Just one quick question. What would you say for young people that are on streets? How can they help you in Lisbon to take all those plans forward with real action? And in addition to the process, how can we really help this right now? Because we cannot wait 10 more years. Thank you.
Well, the question is for Mr.
Okay. Let me begin by this one. Young people are helping a lot, amazingly, incredibly, because each time we see a demonstration, each time we see a speech that is made, it gives us a lot of strength on putting forward this agenda. And everyone has to be very aware that this agenda of sustainability is not simple. It's not easy. It's not liked by everyone. I have a small story. When I took office in 2015, when Antonio Costa went to the national politics, I replaced him in 2015. So I have 2 years term, till the end of term, till 2017. So I had 2 choices, basically. I have to make one choice. It was I could stay quiet and try to pass by those 2 years just waving to people and smiling to people. It was a good strategy. Some of my advisors told me that it was the best that I could do. Just wandering, smiling and wandering. And the second one, it was doing things. And I recall the moment that I said, wow, it's amazing to be mayor of Lisbon, so let's use it, no? If it not goes good in the elections, we see it after. Obviously, I don't want to lose elections, but the idea was, it's a privilege to be here, so let's use the time. So we decided to put an amazing program of public works that was an idea that a very enlightened deputy mayor that we had here for urban planning that he developed for many years, that was called One Square in Each Neighborhood. One Square in Each Neighborhood, it's transforming public space from roads and cars to areas with greens, with parks, with trees, with places for young people, for kids to play, and planting a lot of trees. So we decided to put that program, but we decided to make it a little bit special. It was making the program at the same time in the city, making the all works at the same time in the city. So when this process began, more or less everyone in the city thought that I was crazy. Even my friends and my colleagues from my party, they said, you are crazy, you are going to lose the elections. It's completely crazy, you are doing everything at this time, at the same time. So what's happened is that all types of people that basically were affected by the short-term decisions, because what we were making, it was reducing cars, reducing lanes for cars, reducing parking spots, creating more areas for people, for trees, for everyone. So it was a lot of confusion. It happened something that it was a lateral benefit. Everyone knew me in the country. So the content station was so big that in the news every day, we had town hall meetings with 3 national televisions opening the news televisions about the situation in Lisbon, because they thought it was like Beirut during the war. And one thing that was amazing is that the day that works finished, 6 months before the elections, important detail, the demonstration stopped. And the people begin looking left and right and say, The same day that we opened the parks and the squares, there were young kids playing on the grass, people sleeping on the sun, people just wandering and looking. And well, in that day the contestation stopped. 2 months after, the idea it was, wow, this is great. And as a colleague of mine, a minister from Belgium, told me, and it really happened the same here in Lisbon, 6 months after, people said that the idea was their idea, not mine idea. So people just get appropriated of the changes that were made. This is what to say. I have to say that what the young people is making us is helping us, giving strength to push this agenda. And this agenda is very difficult because the fight for public space and the fight for between the cars is not a problem. I always thought that, sorry to talk a lot about Portugal, but I always thought that the problems of cars, it was a question of a South European country or a recently mid-high income country or a problem of a transition country from a poor country to a rich country. Then I went to Norway and I speak to my friend, mayor of Oslo, the fourth richest country in the world. And I thought that everyone thinks about green and sustainability. And I asked you, Raymond, what is your biggest problem about the elections? He told me it's cars. People just ate was what we made. We just, what did you make? We just took off 400 parking plots in the center of Oslo. And I said, and what is, people are hating me for that. People want cars. And well, fortunately, he ran for elections. He won again the elections. He lost a lot of votes. And in Norway, the fourth richest country in Europe, it was the first country that there was created a party against tolls on highways. The first country, fourth richest country in the world, where the opposition to a green policy, it was creating by a movement that it was about paying tolls for cars in highways. So this is just to give you the sense of the difficulty of changing on this direction, because this agenda is not consensual. This implies change on behaviors of people, in organization of people. It touches very sensitive issues. It's about very sensitive issues about individuality and collectivity, because the significance of a car is not the car is faster, because in many times the car is not faster. You take more time in a car than you take by walking or cycling or on public transport. The big difference about car and public transport is public transport you share with other people. Car, no, you go by yourself. You just go by closed in a capsule. And it's a very cultural difference on the approach. So this is not easy to make. And many people don't feel the same speed and the same way. So young people feel it the same, help us a lot, and demand us. It's very good. Now, it's very good. Some weeks ago, I called for a meeting with the guys from the bicycles. And they say, oh, Mayor, sorry, because sometimes we complain. And I say, please do. You go to the social media, complain about the city hall. Please do that. Because each time you complain, because I'm not going too fast about building cycle lanes, you are helping me. Because I hope you have confidence in me and you can vote for me. The question is that you are helping me, because you are helping me fighting the other guys that really don't want to go at the same speed. You are creating a momentum, a voice. The second area, and just to finish, is that we want to translate this movement in proactive and to give instruments to young people to act. First, into participation of the decisions of the city. It's amazing. When there was the first demonstration here in Portugal, in Lisbon, I was so amazed because I didn't see that coming. I didn't know those young guys. I said, who are those young guys? I don't met them. I don't know who they are. So I just asked them, I need to talk to them. And I asked them to come here, they're leaders. One of the most amazing meetings that I had, because I was wondering, what is the approach of them? What do they want? And I have to tell you, it was a very, very impressive meeting, because they came to my room, very informal. They were a little bit surprised. There were no cameras, no photos, nothing like that. And I said, I don't want to make a public meeting. I just want to hear about you. and they made me a public exam. They have read all the documents and all the policies about the city. They knew more about the politics, about the policies of the city, of sustainable policies of the city, that many of the deputy mayors of the opposition, I have to tell you frankly, of all the deputy mayors of the opposition. And they asked me, this is late, you haven't do this. What's happening with this, and what's happening with that? Why don't you follow that path? Why are you not going faster with this? And I said, wow. You are right. In many cases I explain, because I have to explain that to a 16-year-old people that is enlightened with faith and with energy, that when we are 46 and we have public tenders and then we have bureaucracy and then we have court of audits and then we have blah, 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 and we have, this is not easy to make at the same speed. But it was very enlightening to say. So what we are going to make is, first of all, is to create a forum where people participate, and there where people where I can be judged in a certain way, when they can push for my deputy mayors and they say, what are you doing, guys? Are you going with fast enough? The second is that we decided to put money and to say we are going to make a participatory budget, participatory green budget for people to decide at the community level what projects do they have to make. We have a good tradition here in Lisbon of a participatory budget at system level. So we decided to make this year's edition 2020 only green projects. So it is going to be 5 million, and then we can expand. That can be too small to bigger projects where young people are going to decide in each parish or in group what do they want to make. And then we can make contracts for people to build the projects, because frankly, blah, 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 it's one thing. Doing the things effectively is a little, we need to do both. Huh? We need to talk and we need to make the change happening. So we are putting the money and are putting the municipal resources, and we hope that people get along with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you. It's very inspiring again to hear your words. Addresses also the topic of context, which is what the conference gives. So I will go back to what I said at the beginning. The conference, in my personal perspective, gives context and also gets involved people. So now we are going to hear Gerald about how to get involved and what is next to wait for. Thank you.
Okay, I promise you, I'm going to be quick. We're running a little late to prepare something. So just before we all head out and we start bugging the speakers with questions and get them involved in the conversation, I want to show some details about the conference next year. Yes, it's going to be happening in April 1 to 3. Yes, it's going to be happening at Stufa Fria, at Pavilhão Carlos Lopes, and at the Gulbenkian Museum. But what I really want to talk about is how you can get involved and how you can be part of it. Obviously, the most obvious part is just be there. You just go to the website of the Urban Future and you get yourself a ticket and you're part of this. But there are many other ways how you can do this. So for example, one part is help us shape the program. And the Urban Future is actually a conference where several hundred people contribute with ideas to what should be part of this conference. So whether, like, what are the questions that we should address? What are the people that we should get involved? And so on. So you can do that by sending us emails. You can look up on our website, there are some channels how to do that. If you're a representative of an organization, you can also just join the family. And it is already a quite large family. So we have many international organizations who help us put this together, but we also have a lot already here in Portugal. It's BTI, it's the metropolitan area of Lisbon, it's the city of Lisbon, it's BCSD, it's the Gulbenkian Foundation, it's Zoom, and many, many more who are part of this, who help us get the right people to get together and really make an impact in talking about how do we drive this change. If you're a representative from a business, there are many ways to work with the Urban Future as well. And it's quite simple. Just imagine what 3,000 people who are all deciders, who all make decisions in their communities or in their environments, in their businesses, can do with you together when you're connected to them. So if you are interested in getting involved somehow, then you can be recycling this little card that you have, because on the back of the card there is I want to, and you just cross become a partner, exhibit, join as a speaker, recommend speaker, and you just take the pens outside where we are going to enjoy the food later on, and you write on this whatever we want, and thanks to the name tag we know who you are and we can get back in touch with you. So this is what you do. Whoops. But before I let you go, I want to share one lesson that I learned from working with city changes. And that's pretty universal, because they told me that if you really want to change the behavior of people, you have to manage something that's really difficult to achieve. You have to get into people's heads. So I give an example that I learned from a dear friend on how to do it. It's not universal, but that's one way to do it, to involve the people in certain things. So to do that, I need your help. And let's talk about paper towels. I actually brought some with me. Well, you're all aware of these paper towels that you find in bathrooms. And in Europe, we're using 175 of these paper towels every year per person, which is not really a high number, but if you multiply it by 515 million, it is quite amazing. And if you would stack them next to each other, it's actually a line that circles around the globe 450 times. So it is quite a large number. And what could we do if we just reduced the number of paper towels that we use every day? Okay, that's the first part of it. We all know there are many different ways. So there are like these dispensers. You go in there like and throw it out. You might have the ones that with the sensors. You go in front and they start and you keep waving until you have a long line. And then there are the trifolds and the recycled paper ones that they don't really absorb you, so you need more. But the thing is, you can actually do it with one. And I show you how it works. Actually, I need your help for this. So we need to split the room in two parts. This part of the room, your word is shake. Let's hear it. Shake. Okay. Your part is fold.
Fold.
Fold. Louder. Fold.
Fold.
Okay. So, I got water in here, which is really prohibited. Sorry, look away, Sophia. Okay. First part. You shake 12 times. Your part? Fold. Okay, so you take the paper, you fold it in half, and then you just, do like this. Dry. Very easy. And all you have to remember is two words, which is shake and fold. Why the hell am I telling you this? Very easy. Because from today on, whenever you go to a public bathroom, you will think of me. You will think of that you can do it with one piece of paper, and that you can be the person who drives that change every day, wherever you want. So now, go out, enjoy, have fun, and thank you for coming. Yes, we just follow the crowd downstairs to the food.